Hi, welcome to True Crime No Noise, a small offshoot of Coffee with Karen, where we kind of dive into various things that have been going on, mostly during the week. And every once in a while, we might delve into something a little more historical. My love of true crime has been around as long as I can remember. I started out as a young child going to court with my own mom, who worked in police work, and then went into public safety myself. And prior to that, when court TV started, if there was a good crime on, I developed a migraine for school. I was fine when I got home, but I would definitely miss any day of school when it came to seeing some kind of trial. Nothing beats live courtroom action, but my hope is that this is something that you can listen to or watch. I know that I like to listen to different podcasts or listen to YouTubers when I'm doing other things, or I leave the TV on when I am doing stuff around the house. Welcome to True Crime No Noise. Here, there's no frenzy, no conspiracy spirals, no performative outrage. Facts, context, and clarity. Because these are real families with real victims, and that means real consequence. This isn't really about entertainment, it's about keeping up with what's going on. We're going to talk about these cases like adults. So let's begin. First thing we're going to do is talk about national stories. First is Gilgo Beach. For more than a decade, the murders discovered along Gilgo Beach on Long Island have haunted families and investigators alike. It started to draw the crowd of like national attention, and there's a lot of us that are really interested in what's going to happen. Now, New York doesn't usually allow cameras in the courtroom, so most of it's going to have to be kind of secondhand and reporting, but we're going to keep up on this one. Multiple women have been found buried along Ocean Parkway, and this was beginning in about 2010. Many of these women were sex workers. We aren't here to judge. One of them was from Maine, and so I've been following this story for as long as that part of it has been going on. For years, this case has appeared stalled, and in 2023, authorities arrested Rex Heuermann in connection with several of the murders. Since then, prosecutors have continued expanding charges with additional forensic testing, digital evidence, and DNA analysis has developed. The case is kind of important for one reason above all else. Justice is slow, and it can be painfully slow. These families have waited for years for movement. And as this unfolds in court, we're going to remember something crucial. Charges aren't convictions. Courtrooms determine the guilt, not podcasts, not documentaries, not TikTok threads. We have to follow the evidence and we have to let the system work. That's clarity. There's going to be some interesting pieces of this because there's some, I think, first of its kind DNA testing and analysis that they're doing for this case. So we're going to watch this one pretty carefully. The second national trial going on right now, I'm going to call the Georgia father trial. Georgia's an interesting state because they do allow courtrooms to be filmed. And so you can catch a lot of different trials in Georgia. So there's a father who is currently on trial in connection with his son's school shooting. This is a legally significant case. The question before the court is not what the son did. The question is whether the father's actions, specifically regarding firearm access, rise to criminal liability. This very trial could reshape how courts have to approach parental responsibility altogether. So, where does accountability begin and where does it end? Is negligence criminal? These aren't emotional questions, they're legal ones. And however the court rules here, the precedent may ripple across the country. We're going to have to keep an eye on this one. It is currently going on. You can catch it on various stations, and it's quite interesting. Like I said, this one will, if he's found guilty, reshape um, how parental responsibility is viewed. And that one really interests me because I am a firm believer in you can raise 8 kids the same. Most people don't have 8, I do. And you can raise them all with the same parents in the same house, but most of those kids are gonna turn out differently because they are their own person. So I'm very interested in this one. I know a lot has to do with the access to firearms, so obviously that will be a special piece in this. Now, the trial that I'm currently watching is pretty popular. It's Kouri Richins' trial. This one is going on right now. Many people are watching this one in real time. Kouri Richins is accused of poisoning her husband with fentanyl, and after his death, she published a children's book about grief. Prosecutors allege that she administered the fatal dose of fentanyl. She has maintained her innocence all along, and here are the details that matter. So, the original medical examiner's death certificate did not list homicide. Now, she can be charged with homicide because the finding on a death certificate is different. There are only a small category of things that somebody can list as a cause of death. And homicide on a death certificate just means it was at the hands of another. It doesn't necessarily mean a criminal charge. In this case, Corey is obviously charged with his death. So that didn't end the investigation, but it does matter. Autopsy conclusions definitely can evolve. Toxicology reports take time, and investigators and investigations uncover evidence beyond the initial findings. But this is exactly why real time trial watching requires discipline because online narratives move way faster than forensic science. And a lot of people have been watching this case since the beginning, since pre trial. With this one, I chose to wait. I have not followed it. I didn't want to know all the evidence. I wanted to watch this one from the standpoint of as if I was a juror and I haven't done any extra research on it. So all I know is what's truly happened in real time. Today was only the third day of trial. Tomorrow, when this goes live, will be the fourth day of trial. Obviously, when online narratives move faster than forensic science, noise seems to fill the gap and people love the comment section. So we're gonna have to wait for it in court because allegations are separate from proof. So let's let the cards fall. Okay. The next one is something that I guarantee every person has heard of, and that's the Nancy Guthrie case. It's literally everywhere. It's on everybody's timeline, everybody's feed, everybody's TikTok, everybody's TV. This is both a high profile and a deeply human case. Not many 84-year-old women are kidnapped, and this 84-year-old, Nancy Guthrie, is the mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie's, uh, that's her mom. She's been missing since January 31st, and we are approaching the end of February. What happened was she was dropped off at her home in the Catalina foothills in Arizona around 9:50 p.m. The next morning, she was supposed to appear for a scheduled church live stream. She's been going to church online since COVID, and everybody expects her there every Sunday. So when that didn't happen, authorities were eventually called and they did respond. But what they found at home changed everything. There was blood at or near the entrance that matched her DNA. Law enforcement has publicly stated that they believe she was taken against her will. This is not being treated as a voluntary disappearance. Pretty recently, doorbell footage that has captured a masked individual, at least one, that could be evolving to two, but at least one, approached the home. They appeared to tamper with the camera in the very early morning hours of February 1st. They have not been publicly identified, and there have been no arrests. Nancy has not been located as of the filming of this. There have been a lot of online claims about delayed FBI involvement or political interference. There's no verified reporting on those yet, but we will indeed keep track of that one. According to official statements, local law enforcement did respond immediately, and then the FBI joined in as a supporting agency, which is pretty standard in suspected abductions involving vulnerable adults. So here is what we know. Nancy was last seen January 31st. There is blood found at the scene. At least one masked individual was captured on camera, and she has not been found. What we do not know is who took her, why they took her, where she is, whether she's alive. This is an elderly woman who is missing. That's the headline. And until investigators release more, we have to stay grounded on it. We do know, again, that 84-year-old women are not usually taken captive. This one required medication. And so, with it being so long, we really need to hope for a miracle here. Segment two is going to be about New England in general. That's where I'm from. I do enjoy national true crime. I also enjoy it closer to home. So we're going to just back it up as we go. So this case is really interesting. It did hit national level, but it still involves Maine and New England. So this is one that I've been watching that I'm really, really interested in. This is a really sad case. Sunny Stewart is who this case is about. So Sunny Stewart went paddleboarding on Crawford Pond in Maine. She did not return. Her body was later discovered and her death was ruled a homicide. Almost immediately, speculation exploded online. I mean, panic regionally, serial killer theories, unverified connections. Law enforcement hasn't really confirmed any kind of evidence supporting a serial pattern here. But when something violent happens in a small state, that's how fear spreads quickly. And Maine happens to be a very small state. Pretty much everyone is connected to everyone, kind of like the Kevin Bacon method, where it's like 6 degrees of separation. Maine is actually a lot smaller, with like 2 degrees of separation, sometimes 1 degree. But generally, Maine is a pretty small state. So when it comes to this one, we really need to wait for facts. Okay, so for this one, we know that there was a teenager who was indeed arrested for this. This teen is accused of killing her. And back on February 2nd, he did appear before a judge in Rockland, Maine. Devin Young, who is now 18, is charged with the murder in the death of Sunshine Stewart. She is a Tenants Harbor woman from Maine who was found dead on Crawford Pond in Union, Maine on July 3rd. The hearing was closed to the public, with paper even covering the courtroom window. His parents and defense attorney, as well as the assistant attorney general, assistant district attorney, and a juvenile corrections officer, were there. Nobody commented on the hearing. Prosecutors are attempting to try Young as an adult because he did turn 18 shortly after her death. The case is going to be sealed until the court determines whether Young is competent to stand trial and whether he'll be tried as an adult. No public information is being let out about the case until then. So this is one that we're going to have to watch. We're going to have to follow it and pay attention. And this one I am really interested in. The next one, many, many, many people know. There is literally not enough time for me to tell you about this case. As a matter of fact, I would be so interested to see what happens if I were to say, like, ask AI, hey, fill me in on the Karen Reed case in under months, because you would have to sit down and the whole thing is just an absolute cluster. Karen Reed is a woman who was dating a Boston cop. She was tried twice, and the first trial was a mistrial. The second trial was she was acquitted of his murder. So this case has deeply divided public opinion. Online discourse in this case has been absolutely insane. And trial by hashtag is not trial by law because courtrooms have to operate on evidence and not emotion. We had to let due process unfold in this one. And due process showed that Karen Reed was indeed innocent and that John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. That means that John O'Keefe's killers are still out there. This is going to be interesting. Her civil proceedings, in a civil proceeding, there's a lot more investigating that can be done and a lot more that's led into court. The sidebars of the Karen Reed first and second trial are coming out, and it's often said that a case is tried in the sidebar because that's where a lot of the private rulings are ruled, and you don't get to hear that during the court trial. The Karen Reed trial is it's truly fascinating to me, and we're gonna watch the civil proceedings happen. This may take a long time. I have no idea. I will be very interested in the House defendants, and what they have to say. The problem is, if the killer's still out there, do we really think they're gonna be honest? Another thing in this case is that the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, who is now a disgraced former Massachusetts state trooper, he was involved in a lot of other cases at the time, and he's kind of muddied the water. This gentleman had to turn his phone over, but he said he lost his phone and it was deleted. When they did get into the iCloud, they were basically like, well, you're not going to find anything, except that it went back over a decade in the iCloud because the iCloud harbors secrets. And he did and said a lot of things that were not appropriate and not above the board, and that any true police officer would not be proud of. And as someone formerly in law enforcement, there's nothing I don't respect less than a police officer who's below the board. When you are given the power and authority of becoming a police officer, you need to take that seriously. And this gentleman did not take this seriously. So this is going to be interesting. Okay, we're going to call segment 3 systems. Before we close, we're going to talk about something a little less dramatic, but I consider equally important, and that's discovery violations. When prosecutors fail to turn over required evidence to the defense, that's how cases can collapse. Charges get dismissed, and it's not because someone's innocent, it's because of procedural matters. So that's how due process protects everyone. It does protect defendants, and everybody in the United States should be afforded innocence until proven guilty. And criminal cases and civil cases have a different level of that. Um, that's something we can go into at another time if you do not know the different levels of burden. But due process is supposed to protect everyone, defendants, victims, integrity of convictions, because when corners are cut, that's when appeals follow. It's not flashy, it's very foundational. And discovery violations are a huge no. I also never understand why people try to get away with sneaky things. It's one thing if you are a child forgetting to put away a toy, it's a completely different thing if we're talking court proceedings. Segment number 4, we're going to call humanity. So, true crime draws us in, right? That's human. We want the answers, we want to know the patterns, and we want justice. Cruelty regarding true crime is very optional. How you report and or handle something is also optional. I respect the First Amendment and I respect that you are afforded reporting on something any way you would like. That's the First Amendment. There are consequences for different things, but we do need to remember and keep the First Amendment. In my case, though, before you comment on something, you need to remember that generally the family is reading. The family's reading comments, the family's watching the news. they can't shield themselves from it. Very rarely do you find somebody that actually turns it all off. It's everywhere. Whether you're local and involved in something or something becomes a national story, you've gotta remember, before you share any kind of rumor, you need to ask whether it's verified, because we can be curious without being reckless, and we can be informed without being inflammatory. That's the difference between crime and noise. So this has been True Crime, No Noise. I will see you next Thursday.